coaster manufacturers have their sweet spot. They fall into that groove, and for lack of a better term, they get typecast. But every once in a while, they come out with a coaster that makes you turn your head and think, huh, that's pretty cool. Those coasters where they did something that's never been done before, use interesting terrain to perfection, or just rose to the occasion to give their customer exactly what they needed, in a way that deserves a standing ovation. These are every manufacturer's most creative coaster. Before we start, I want to thank Sean Kearns for pitching this video idea as a new installment in my By Manufacturer series. If you like this type of video, I have a playlist full of them, that link's down below. Let's start with aerodynamics. They were a pioneer of the steel tubular track going back to 1959, but their most creative coaster by far was their last one, X at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This broke so many barriers. The first coaster to put riders on the side of the track, half the ride being on top of the track and going backward, half the ride being under the track and going forward, and having the extra set of rails that controlled the spinning of the seats. This isn't just Aero's most creative coaster, it's one of the most creative coasters ever, period. Art engineering came onto the coaster scene almost a decade after Aero went bankrupt, and of their 19 coaster projects, I think it comes down to 2 coasters at Lagoon. The brand new Primordial combines good coaster elements with a shooting dark ride, all set in a man-made mountain, but I'm giving this honor to its neighbor, Cannibal. This was a joint effort between Lagoon's own engineers and art engineering, so maybe this is a technicality, but since they had a hand in it, I'm giving it to them. From that elevator lift, insane angle on the first drop, and from there, just crazy weird elements. A vertical emblem, a near upside down almost inversion, and the brilliant Lagoon roll. You just don't see elements like that on other coasters. B&M isn't known for being super creative. They did build the first inverting looping coaster. They did have fun with the Quarry Wall and Superman Krypton coaster at Fiesta, Texas. They even set up 2 inverted coasters that cross paths on 3 occasions. But I think Pipeline the Surf coaster at SeaWorld Orlando is their most creative coaster. This gave new life to the idea of standing up on a coaster, but the elements would all be different, designed around the up and down movement of the trains, giving the term standing airtime a new meaning. This got rave reviews when it opened in 2023, and I hope they build more around the world. Custom Coasters International, or CCI, was a wooden coaster manufacturer, and it's hard to be creative when it comes to wooden coasters. There is one huge exception to that rule, and that's Lost Coaster of Superstition Mountain at Indiana Beach. This was a dark ride the park wanted to turn into a coaster, so CCI had next to nothing to work with. Such a tight space, not much room for height and speed, but they turned this into a really fun ride. An elevator lift to start, 2-car trains where you sit forward or backward, only 20 miles an hour, but somehow still terrifying. This was one of their last coasters, but they can be proud of this one. Chance Rides hasn't done a whole lot when it comes to coasters, so I'm looking ahead to Hot Wheels Twin Wheel Racer at Mattel Adventure Park. This is going to have a launch, might be partially enclosed, so we'll see how they work in the Hot Wheels theming. I'm speculating here, but this should end up as their most creative coaster. The Dinn Corporation is yet another wooden coaster company, and the only Dinn Corp coaster that stands out is Hercules. So I'm going to do what I always do, and call the beast at Kings Island a Dinn coaster. After all, he was in charge when Kings Island built this in 1979, building a 7,300-foot coaster out in the middle of the woods, riding that terrain, that gradual drop into the Helix finale being the perfect drumroll moment, building up all that drama. This is the opposite of a traditional cookie-cutter Woody. E&F Miler builds a lot of portable coasters, some for kids, some janky airtime machines, but one stands out as interesting, Sea Serpent at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. Unlike most kids coasters that are built on a flat plot of land, this is built on the side of a hill, and a lot of this layout takes place below the station level, having to rise back up into it. It's not much, but that is an interesting touch and something you hardly see on a kids coaster. Great Coasters International, or GCI, had a few good options. Again, it's a wooden coaster company, but when you look at Wicker Man and the way they have the train weave in and out of the Pornin head, or Zambezi Zinger and the way they use the Titan track to spiral that train to a 74-foot height, these are good options, but my pick is Lightning Racer or Hershey Park. It can't be easy to make a racing coaster, especially one that uses diverging paths and uses flybys, not just keeping the train side by side. At the end, winding up with a photo finish after 3,400 feet of track. It's a twisted mess of wood, but it's crafted just right to make the racing and dueling factor work. Gerstlauer is coming out with a pretty creative coaster in 2025, Palindrome at Codaland. This infinity coaster having a lift hill, a 0G stall over a road, and isn't even a complete circuit, using a turntable to get back to the station. Still, I think their most creative coaster is Shore Des Carnin at Hansa Park. Not only is this super well themed, not only does it stand 240 feet tall, and somehow doesn't go upside down during all those big elements, it slips in 2 tricks at the beginning and the end, and they deserve a lot of credit for making this massive coaster that much more interesting. Giovanola only has 3 coasters, and I suppose their most creative coaster is Anaconda at Gold Reef City, by default. Yeah, it kinda resembles a Batman clone, but that helix around the rocks is so cool. This literally wins just for that. The Gravity Group is another wooden coaster company, and their first 2 coasters are not only huge, they're super creative. Hades has the whole pre-lift section that's amazing, not to mention the 2 long tunnels under the parking lot, and the inversion out in that island. Then, they had the Voyage, one of the world's longest coasters, achieving that feat with only 1 lift hill, just standing 159 feet tall. That doesn't even seem possible, but they used that terrain to perfection to keep that momentum. Still, I'm giving this honor to Switchback at ZDT's, the world's only shuttle wooden coaster. This family fun center had 0 room to work with, and still, the Gravity Group found a way to give it a major thrilling coaster. It starts with a 56-foot drop, but it would be hard to cram in a complete circuit, so it ends with a vertical spike. The train completes the course backwards, and it uses a switch track to get back to the station. Despite this, it still has a method to use 2 trains, which is just awesome. Hopkins only built 7 coasters, and none of them are that interesting. So let's go back to Wonderland and Texas Tornado, creative for one reason only. They had to reprofile those 2 loops to make them work, and that made for one of the most hilarious and frightening scenes in the coaster world. Hopkins can point to this coaster and just say, "Trust me, we got this." Intamin has been on the cutting edge of innovation for decades. They had to build a quiet but powerful launch for Knott's Berry Farm, so they invented the hydraulic launch. Six Flags Qiddiya gave them, apparently, unlimited funds to build Falcon's Flight, launching this on top of a cliff and diving down. But for Intamin, I have to go with Volcano the Blast Coaster at King's Dominion. This mountain had been in the park for years, rides had come and gone, and Intamin fashioned a coaster that would blast out the top, wind around and go into inversions. And to do this, they had to launch a train under the track, something nobody had ever done before. Jinma isn't known for being that creative. They're known for taking existing ideas and, well, let's just say, they put their own spin on them. The most creative thing I've seen from them is their dueling tilt coaster, Battle of Jungle King at He-Fi Sunak Land. Vekoma came up with this idea, but while they took a 20-year hiatus, Jinma took the mantle and built a bunch of these. This one happens to have 2 tracks, Tiger and Dragon, and the tracks duel. It looks awesome, seeing those 2 tracks staring each other down as they tilt into place. Mack has stepped up their coaster game in the last 15 years. They just keep getting better and better. But when it comes to creativity, I'm calling on Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. Not only is a launched inverting spinning coaster super cool, this being their prototype, the way this uses terrain is the reason it's on this list. It starts at the top of a 3-story station, drops vertical straight out of it, and uses launches to get back up to the 100-foot level. Maurer makes all kinds of coasters, including this X-Car. This is weird, but creative? Maybe. I'm looking to their Spike coaster and the very intriguing Desmo race at Mirabilandia. These single-rail powered coasters are very unique. This one looks like you're riding a motorcycle, and this has interactive acceleration. Because it's powered, the rider can actually choose when they want to accelerate. You just don't see that on a roller coaster, and this fits in with that motorcycle theme very well. Morgan only has 9 coasters, and most of them are pretty basic. Sure, they have the world's longest coaster, but that's on a parking lot. Their most creative project was Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood, having to take a rough aero looper, take out the inversions, and reprofile it to turn it into a glass-smooth hyper with insane airtime. This is something that had never been done before, and they nailed it. It's just too bad no other park has asked them to do it. Pax is a Russian manufacturer, building a bunch of obscure coasters in Europe and Asia. And when it comes to creativity, you have to look at Cobra at VVC Wheel Park in Russia. This shuttle loop not only has 2 vertical spikes, they dressed up the ends to look like the head and the tail of a cobra. Not too often, the name of a coaster actually looks like the coaster, but leave it to Pax to make it happen. Pinfari is known for their basic portable fair-style coasters, so it was hard to find something I would call creative. That being said, there are 3 wacky worms out there that use a turntable. Yes, these very basic kids coasters ran 2 trains and used a turntable to pull it off. We begged for this on coasters like Flash at Great Adventure, and here we have it on a wacky worm. They had one at Coney Island until 2008, and at the UK's Dreamland, and the only one still open is in Iraq. Premier Rides is known for their launch coasters, and they have 2 good launch contenders. Epic Coaster at Doha Quest uses a swing launch and weaves through all kinds of crazy theming. And Revenge of the Mummy is very well themed and is designed to cater to the storyline of the ride. However, I am not going for a premier launch coaster. I'm going for the one and only time any manufacturer has used a Ferris wheel lift hill. This is Roundabout at Freestyle Music Park, and this is such an awesome gimmick. They could have used an elevator lift, but why do that when you can build a Ferris wheel? The rest of the ride is pretty basic, but this still wins for obvious reasons. PTC is the oldest of the wooden coaster manufacturers, and they specialize in the basic kids models, the out and back wooden coaster, and when they're feeling crazy, the L-shaped model. I have to go with their one steel coaster, the indoor coaster called Golden Nugget at Dinosaur Beach, set inside and on top of a fake mountain. And when Dinosaur Beach closed, this was saved and converted to Black Diamond at Knoebels. But since this was built and designed to be Golden Nugget, that's what I'm going with. Rocky Mountain Construction, or RMC, is pretty great, but when it comes to creativity, there are only a few good options. Iron Rattler plays on and off a cliff, but that wasn't really their idea. We'll get to that one next. Twisted Colossus did a great job mixing thrills and having interactive moments in the two tracks. The only time anyone asked them for a dueling coaster until Joy at Wallaby Holland. For RMC, I'm going with Lightning Rod at Dollywood. Not only was this built up and over a hill, using that terrain to perfection, that quad down being the best possible way to come down a hillside, but when this opened, it had a launch lift hill. Granted, it didn't work out great, but they had the idea of launching a wooden coaster up an incline, and at its peak, it was spectacular, just not sustainable. The Roller Coaster Corporation of America, or RCCA, doesn't have many coasters. They were responsible for the only modern looping wooden coaster, Son of Beast. They built Magnus Colossus on a hillside at Terra Mythica, but their most creative project was Rattler at Fiesta, Texas. The real brains behind Iron Rattler's layout. It was this RCCA Woody that dove off the cliff, back on top of it, off again, back on it, and in the end, going through it. This massive coaster being the flagship ride at the park when it opened in 1992. It may not have been a great ride, and by the end, it was probably downright awful, but the way they played on, off, and through the quarry wall, that was pretty great. S&S is known for their super diverse catalog, and 3 coasters stand out here. Their very first coaster was Hypersonic XLC, the company having the idea of turning their drop towers on its side and launching a train using compressed air. This is how they renovated Powder Keg, turning a Premier Rides water coaster into a great launched hyper-style coaster. My pick is Trannon at Skara Summerland, the one free-fly coaster they ever built, and the only coaster to flip riders from one side of the track to the other, the track inverting but the cars never do. A total gimmick, but makes an otherwise small and dull coaster super interesting. The SBF Visa group mainly builds small coasters. Not much to work with here, but I think their idea to put a hamster wheel on their kids' coasters was awesome. These are just basic oval layouts, but when you're in a car that's flipping around and you're doing somersaults and backflips, it doesn't matter what the track's doing. You're having one insane ride inside that hamster wheel. This makes even the smallest kids coaster appeal to everyone. Adults in the front, kids in the back. Schwarzkopf built a lot of portable coasters. A lot of these are clones of each other, but some are pretty interesting. Both Revolution at Magic Mountain and Mindbender over Georgia use terrain very well, and Revolution does a great job setting up the big dramatic moment, easing you into that signature loop standing front and center. I think their most creative coaster is Bulla at Selva Magica, a shuttle loop that was twisted around, so instead of being linear, it fits on a smaller plot of land. This uses a tire launch to get it up to speed. The loop wraps around the station, the spikes come to a single point behind the ride. It really does look like something out of Roller Coaster Tycoon. Skyline has built 5 coasters, and the one that turned the most heads was Brava at Mass Mocha, the art museum coaster. Half art piece, half coaster. It had a capacity of 1 rider per hour, going into a 12-foot drop and coming to a stop at the bottom of the layout. You get out and they have to pull the car back up for the next rider. This was a project from E.J. Hill, an artist that wanted a piece to honor the backyard coaster, and Skyline got the job done for him, the coaster running its 18-month course and closing in early 2024. Togo has built some interesting coasters over the last 70 years, most of them being in Japan where the company comes from, and one time they built a coaster that makes it seem like you're pedaling your way through the course. But let's stop and appreciate how creative their Ultra Twister was. Track and rails all around the car, no turns, most of these having a switch track, dumping the train out backwards, a near vertical drop, inline twists. These coasters are visually amazing, doing things that hadn't been seen before, and apparently really fun too. Vekoma has taken some chances over the past 50 years, and they've had some interesting opportunities, like building the $100 million Expedition Everest at Animal Kingdom, working in switch tracks in a backward section to fit in the storyline. They also came up with a tilt coaster that Jinma would end up borrowing. But for Vekoma, I'm going with Stealth at Great America, the world's first attempt at a large-scale flying coaster. There had been other coasters where riders lay flat in a single rider car, but this was a full train, taking elements on your back, flipping over and putting you in the flying position, navigating inversions. Vekoma's vision of a flying coaster was brilliant. I just think it fell victim to all its moving parts, maintenance issues, slow operations, and that's why it didn't catch on more. Wiegand is all about the alpine coasters, but they did have some interesting models. I just talked about the single rider laying down cars, and Wiegand's most creative coaster is one of those, Hexenwechseln at this park in Germany. You can say it, cause I can't. Hanging by a single rail, in a little rocket ship. This looks like a backyard coaster, but was in fact built by a reputable manufacturer. Zamperla has built 400 coasters, but it was hard to find one that I could call creative. I went with Puss in Boots' Giant Journey at Universal Studios Singapore, an inverted coaster starting with a spiral lift. Heading up inside the castle, passing by all the Puss in Boots theming. This was a one-of-a-kind project for Zamperla, one of 400, and they custom-made it for Universal. Zierer has 200 coasters to their name, and a lot of these are very small. But when it comes to picking a creative coaster, I went with Lisebergbanan at Liseberg. This park in Gothenburg, Sweden is built on a side of a giant hill. You got rides in the top, you got rides in the bottom, and then you got rides in between. That's where Lisebergbanan lives. It starts at the bottom, goes to the top, and it hugs the ground the whole way down, going into big helices, using every bit of that terrain, 4,400 feet of track, and from my personal experience, a brilliant ride. With a catalog full of cookie cutter coasters, you can tell they had fun with this one. That's a wrap on every manufacturer's most creative coaster. Let me know what you think of my picks, and if you have any other ideas for any manufacturer, sound off in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, and if you're new here and love coasters, please give me a sub. I want to thank my Patreons. If you want bonus access, bonus content, and have your name listed at the end of each video, check my links below and join. Also, check out my second channel, where I post copyright-free off-ride footage. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.